Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over the severe weather which is going over parts of the Northeast and the Great Lakes for today. Right now it's in parts of Michigan and maybe lingering into parts of Indiana and Ohio. It'll eventually start up back again for tomorrow afternoon, and that's where areas like Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine might get in on some of these severe storms. And then in between those areas, if you're kind of in those lighter shades of pink and red, that's where you're looking at the threat of some storms, but it doesn't look like there'll be anything all too severe. Once you're into that red category, that's where you want to pay a little bit more attention. And we're going to be timing this out for you guys, giving you all the information you need to know. So make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. Over the next couple of days, we'll be switching back and forth between talking about severe weather, and potentially things in the tropics, and also covering the potential for our first snowstorm out in the Rockies and also potentially into the northern plains. So we're going to be talking about that interchangeably over the next, I would say, 5 or 6 days. So let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some red flag warnings in effect for parts of Wyoming, South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho, as well as some severe thunderstorm watches in effect for parts of Colorado, Indiana, Ohio, and into Michigan as well. We have a few air quality alerts in effect for a little bit of California and Oregon, as well as some flood watches for a good portion of southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and the westernmost panhandle of Florida. And then we have a few tropical storm warnings offshore as well. Taking a look at yesterday, we had a high temperature of 116 degrees Fahrenheit in Ocotillo Wells, California. The low temperature was in Copper Basin, where they got down to 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was in Chapman Ranch, Texas, where they got 2.18 inches of rainfall. Now, this was before the really heavy rainfall which took place, or I wouldn't say really heavy, but moderate rainfall that took place over coastal Texas and southern Louisiana, which is still going on for some of those spots. So even though 2.18 inches, remember, that was taken before the majority of that rainfall came in. So we're going to have to wait until tomorrow to see what the real rainfall reports are from that area. Let's start off with your current radar. Now, this is as of 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:10 Central Time. This is when I'm recording this right now, so this is when all of this information is valid for, and particularly when you're looking at the Storm Prediction Center forecast and the radar image in this video, I would recommend that if you're watching this, let's say over 2 hours from when this is uploaded, or even over an hour from when this is uploaded, then I would recommend checking on your local weather app. A couple good apps to use for the radar, it would be the Weather Channel app, AccuWeather, really any weather app. Most of them have a radar feature, or just turn on your local news channel. They probably switch on to the weather every 5 or 6 minutes, and they'll probably show the radar on there as well. And also with the watches and warnings, go to your local National Weather Service page. Again, if you're watching this maybe an hour or more after this has been uploaded, again, I would recommend checking up on all those things because they'll probably be updated from what you're seeing right now. Right now, we do have a line of storms which is going to be crossing over Lansing and then eventually into Flint, Michigan over the next couple of minutes. So we're looking at probably the next 30 minutes to an hour is when that should be moving into there. Eventually, we're looking at overnight, not overnight, but probably later this evening. So something around 6 to 8 o'clock p.m. in Detroit when we would be dealing with most of the rainfall moving in there. Eventually, it'll cross into southern Ontario. You would see some bands of rainfall even make it down into parts of Ohio and Indiana. So again, we're going to be covering the Futurecast radar in just a moment. That's where you're going to see where most of that is going to start to develop. We're expecting that even though this line doesn't look too convective as of right now, it does look strong, but it doesn't look awfully severe or awfully dangerous as of now. We're expecting more development into southeastern Michigan where you have high amounts of energy. So this will probably beefen up over the next couple of hours. If we look at the severe thunderstorm watch, the hazards are on the top. top, and then the county map is at the bottom. You can see that this covers pretty much all of Michigan except for the northwestern counties and the UP of Michigan, as well as parts of northern Indiana except for northwestern Indiana, and then also for northwestern Ohio, basically from Toledo on westward, is where we have a severe thunderstorm watch currently in place. Low risk of tornadoes, and this is all according to the Storm Prediction Center. Low risk of tornadoes. EF2 plus tornadoes, very low chance. Wouldn't rule it out though. Severe winds, moderate risk, and then for the rest of the categories, 75 miles per hour plus hail, 75 mile per hour plus winds, severe hail, and also 2-inch plus hail. All of those have a low chance of happening, but again, it's not out of the question for that to occur. When you're looking at the biggest risk, I would say it's going to be in southeastern Michigan. Once you get southeast of about Flint or Lansing is when you're going to start to get most of that development. So it would be within here and potentially into some parts of southern Ontario as well, where you would be dealing with the majority of the severe weather. If we look at the Storm Prediction Center page, now they could still put up an enhanced risk, but as of right now, they only have a slight risk. If you look at the top left corner, that's the categorical outlook. So you can see we have that slight risk for some parts of eastern Illinois, northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and the eastern and southern part of Michigan, where we have that slight risk. If they were to put up an enhanced risk, it would be down here, but that's all going to be based on the development of that line. So if that line does not develop as much as we're expecting, then expect this to stay as a slight risk. If they see that this is potentially growing into more of a tornado or hail threat, maybe some of these storms are starting to break off from each other and we could get a little bit of separation, that could lead them to put up an enhanced risk. Definitely not out of the realm of possibilities with this event. We're looking at the main threats being hail and also wind. So hail, we have a 5% chance over this entire area. So again, not a huge chance of hail, but definitely still expected over some area. Wind is also expected to be one of the bigger threats. We're looking at a 15 to 30% chance of that. And then we do have a 2% chance of tornadoes. Not the highest chance, but I would not rule out 1 or 2 weak tornadoes within this event for today. And then if we look at for tomorrow, you can see that we have a slight risk in effect from Maine to West Virginia, so fairly wide area from parts of coastal central New England all the way down to the central Appalachians, where we have that slight risk in effect. The hail risk and tornado risk is going to be the bigger issue, especially if you live in central New England. So I'm talking about mainly southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, coastal Maine, southern Maine, right around Portland, Maine, and then also into parts of northern Massachusetts and east central New York, where we're dealing with the main threat of not only hail, but also looking at a 5% chance of tornadoes, and then also a 15% chance of wind damage. And this is again on the day 2 outlook, so I would not be surprised that once we get to tomorrow, when it's in the day 1 time frame, that they would upgrade that to an enhanced risk potentially. Definitely still a possibility. Let's start timing this out for you guys. This would be as of around 3 p.m. today. So this is what the model was expecting for 3 p.m. And if we were looking at just about an hour or two before, this is basically what the radar looked like. It was a little bit actually more convective than what you're showing right here. Once we get to right around 6 p.m. Eastern time, which would be 5 p.m. Central time, you can see that line is fairly well developed, and this is when this is going to be really the big test. Once it crosses over, I would say, between Flint and Lansing, once it gets southeast of there into this area right here, is it going to continue to develop, or some of the cooler lake waters from Lake Huron, some of the cooler lake waters from Lake Erie once it passes by there, are those going to affect the storm so much that it's not able to develop as much, especially on the central and southern end of the storm? You can also see some of the storms firing up into Indiana. That would be by 5 p.m. Central Time today. If we look at 8 p.m. Central Time, you can see now most of the severe weather is up into Canada. So while these storm Storm Prediction Center in the United States, again, only covers the contiguous United States, only the lower 48 states. We don't know what the risk would be if you were to extend that into Canada, and I would assume that you would probably be under the equivalent of a slight risk for there if the Storm Prediction Center did Canadian weather updates if you live in Ontario. So we're looking at a fairly strong line of storms, basically all the way up into fairly far north into Ontario, into central Ontario, where you're dealing with some of that heavy rainfall and thunderstorm activity. It then breaks off as it moves into Lake Erie, as it moves into Lake Ontario. So these areas right here, some cooler lake waters helping to break that storm apart, and that's going to pretty much do it for the first day of severe weather. So you can see we go along into the wee morning hours of tomorrow, and we're not looking at too much. We're looking at some scattered sprinkled showers here and there across the Ohio Valley in southern Ontario. But now what we're going to start to see is a reorganization of this, what was the severe weather from Michigan. That's going to reorganize once it passes east of the Great Lakes, and it'll start to move into the central New England region and into the Northeast, where it'll form back into another line of strong severe storms. So this will be by 12 p.m. Eastern time. So right around noon, we're dealing with still just lingering rainfall, but we're starting to see the signs of this starting to develop a little bit more. So you can see some of that yellow and orange popping up over northern New York. And what we're going to see is that by 3 p.m., we're looking at this becoming a lot more widespread. So this is 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're looking at heavy rainfall and convective storms from central New York all the way up to the Canadian border along New Hampshire. So fairly strong storms, and these are going to continue in a southeasterly manner. You're going to start to see that the southern end of this also starts to develop a little bit more as time goes on. So as we move this on to 6 p.m., notice that we have rainfall all the way from New Brunswick, Canada, down to Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. So that's a very wide area of rainfall. And if we're looking at convective energy, that's basically from the Ohio and West Virginia state line all the way up into central Maine. So fairly long area of severe weather, and that's going to continue to move on eastward. So if we move this on to about 9 p.m., you do have mostly just non-convective rainfall at this point, but along the southern end of this, we could potentially be dealing with some form of convection into northeastern Pennsylvania, some of the Catskills as well in New York. So that is definitely a possibility. And then it's going to really break off once it gets within, I'd say, 50 miles of the coast. It should start to break off a lot more, and we're not dealing with as much in the way of convective activity after that. Although some lingering rain showers early in the morning, so we're talking about 2 or 3 a.m. tomorrow, or Thursday actually, is possible. If we move this on to later in the day on Thursday, again, these showers are going to continue to linger on, especially if you live within 25 miles of the coast. So you're looking at this area right here, potentially dealing with some lingering showers, but it should be light. So you might see a little bit of rain pop up, and then 15 minutes later, it's not there. Again, it's a pop-up type of shower. We're not dealing with anything too major, nothing that's going to cause flooding, of course. If we look at the CAPE values, convective available potential energy, going into today, we have very high values. That's all up through Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Ontario. We're dealing with CAPE values between 3,000 and 4,000 joules per kilogram, so very, very high, and that's definitely enough to support some severe weather and some thunderstorm activity, and that definitely can help some thunderstorms develop. If you look at for day 2, which would be tomorrow, you can see that for the Northeast, not as much CAPE, but again, I always say this, in the Northeast, you're not going to need as much CAPE as you will in an area like the central United States, and that is mainly because you're not going to be dealing with as big of a temperature gradient in an area like Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio like you will be in the Northeast because of elevation, because of the coast. All of that will bring a much bigger temperature difference, and temperature differences can create their own form of energy. So you don't need necessarily all of that to come in the form of CAPE. You can get a lot of it in the form of temperature differential within a fairly close area. The coast is cooling off, so we're dealing with mainly sea surface temperatures in the 50s, 40s, and 60s. 40s, of course, up near Maine and New Hampshire, and into well, not maybe not that far south, but getting up near Nova Scotia, and then as you get down closer to Delaware, Maryland, that's where they're down into the 60s and 70s. So some of that will linger on to the land, and you'll start to see that we do have a gradually increasing temperature differential in these areas. So you're not going to necessarily need 4,000 joules per kilogram worth of CAPE to be able to get a strong thunderstorm. You might only need 1 to 2,000. And in this case, we still have 2 to 3.5, 2 to 3,500 joules per kilogram. So that's a fairly good amount right there. If we look at the temperatures again, here's that temperature differential right in work. You can see that over Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, we're looking at pretty standard 86 to 88 degrees over that entire area. And then if we look at for the Northeast, you can see it's much different. We're dealing with some pockets into the 70s, and then right next to what you have into the 80s. So that temperature differential will really help these storms develop. Some of that, again, is due to the ocean effect, and then also some of that is just due to elevation within this area. And we're looking at 80s and upper 70s, which is fairly good. It's actually a little bit warmer than normal into some of these areas. So that's enough to definitely get some severe weather. You only really need it to be above 70 or 75 degrees to get some severe weather. And if we look at the dew points, starting off in parts of the Great Lakes, we're looking at 70, mainly around 68, 69, 70, maybe even 71 degree dew points. Definitely high enough to warrant some severe weather. And if we look up into the Northeast, pretty much the same story, and especially over that area that's going to be affected the most, we're looking at dew points between about 68 to about 71 or 72 degree dew points. So definitely high enough to support some of that severe weather. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications because I do daily uploads. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave a comment down below. I'll be responding within a few hours of you posting that. Our usual upload time is about 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern time, so make sure you are there every day so that you don't miss an upload. And if you have a special weather photo that you want to share and send in, email it to the link in the description below, the email address down there, and you might be featured in one of my videos. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.